MDAs and various ministers. And even if the Senate eventually adjourns for the Salah holidays and all that, we intend to pass the budget before the Easter. So I do know that we will come back within this month to make sure that we pass the budget.
Now, as Nigerians await the passage of the 2026 appropriation bill, we bring you this report on some of the key assumptions and what is in there for Nigerians, and will it be impactful in the lives of Nigerians? Let's bring you details of this. In Nigeria, the annual budget is more than a fiscal document, but a promise of roads that will be built, hospitals that will function, jobs that will emerge, and lives that will improve. Yet, for many Nigerians, that promise has often felt distant, delayed, or even broken. When projects of consolidation, renewed resilience, and shared prosperity, expectations were once again high, but so were skepticism. At 58.47 trillion naira, the 2026 budget is about 6% higher than the 2025 estimate, signaling expansion. Government projections show 34.3 trillion in revenue, leaving a significant deficit of 23.85 trillion naira, roughly 4.28% of GDP. On paper, the assumptions appear cautiously optimistic. Oil bench price $64 per barrel. Production at 1.84 million barrels per day. Exchange rate at 1,400 to $1. Inflation target 16.5%, easing to 13%. Growth projection at 4.68%. The administration insists that this is a realistic and reform-driven budget anchored on fiscal discipline and economic recovery. But beyond the figures lies a deeper concern. Will Nigerians feel it? One of the most troubling backdrops to the 2026 proposal is a performance of the 2025 budget, which lawmakers have described as deeply alarming. Despite allocations on paper, capital project releases in 2025 were effectively non-existent. For ordinary Nigerians, this translates into roads that remain unconstructed, schools that exist only on budget lines, hospitals without upgrades, youth without the promised jobs tied to infrastructure projects. The lawmakers have openly questioned how a country can claim development when capital expenditure, the engine of growth, is not implemented. This raises a critical issue. The 2025 capital projects were not funded. What happens to those promises in 2026?
Now, 2025 will go down in history as a year that we didn't have any budget, because that is the truth of the matter. Now, even the 30% implementation that we have been promised, as we're having the budget defense now, we discover that most of the agencies do not even have up to 1%, some 2%, of it, even the warrants. In cases where there are warrants, there was no release. So they're bouncing back to us as if the budget was a fluke. If you watch the budget defense of this year, you'll be shocked about what is going on. Health came here crying, defense came crying, everybody comes crying. Every agency. And what do you expect National Assembly to do? I saw an agency that came here and said what was given to them for 2025 was 9 million naira for their capital. 9 million. And out of the 9 million, it was only a warrant, but there was no release. So it's pitiable. And I don't want us to go down in history as an assembly or a ministry or a government that did not implement 1 year's budget. Something has to happen. Mr. President promised us here when he came for budget defense that everything about 2024, budget presentation, 2024 and 2025, 30% shall be concluded before March 31st. And in that same budget address, he specifically mentioned the people involved. He said, Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy.
Nigeria currently finds itself in an unusual fiscal situation, implementing two budgets simultaneously. The 2024 budget and the 2025 budget, originally meant to expire at the end of their respective years, have both been extended to March 31, 2026. Now, the federal government plans to merge outstanding elements of both budgets into 2026, commence full implementation of the 2026 budget from April 1. While these strategies framed as consolidation, it introduces complexity. Unfinished projects from 2 years are being rolled into a new fiscal plan. Funding pressures are increasing, execution risks are multiplying. For citizens, it raises a simple but powerful question. If past budgets are not fully implemented, how can a new one succeed?
Why the non-release? We make a budget, we don't make a budget as an annual ritual. No. You spend all the time with the Minister of Budget, a good friend, and all of you working the federal apparatus, preparing budget to us. We sometimes even suspend our own vacations, stay for long hours, scrutinizing it, and supporting, as Senator Ninga has said, everything that the federal government, the executive arm, all the support they wanted from this National Assembly, from this Senate, we have given it all. But ministry after ministry, the recurring complaint is non-release. Almost zero implementation or performance. That is very sad.
A closer look at the 2026 structure reveals a familiar pattern: high recurrent spending and rising debt obligations. Debt servicing, 15.5 trillion naira. Recurrent non-debt, 15.2 trillion naira. Personnel and pension at 10 trillion naira. Overhead at 2.2 trillion. Meanwhile, capital expenditure stands at 25.68 trillion naira, slightly lower than the previous year, despite growing infrastructure needs. This imbalance reinforces a long-standing concern. Nigeria spends more on running government than on building the future.
The declaration of state of emergency on the security sector by Mr. President implies that a place of prominence will be given to the security architecture with regard to funding so that they can discharge their constitutional responsibility without let or hindrance. But in the course of our interaction with the various security agencies, we have discovered that they got zero allocation with regard to their capital budget. And this is completely in contradiction to the state of the emergency declared by Mr. President on the security sector. It seems like we are appropriating and reprobating at the same time. We cannot declare a state of emergency on the security sector and fail to fund them properly in consonance with that declaration. So I think even within the limited resources that we have, and in view of the avalanche of security problem that we have across the nooks and crannies of the country, the security sector should be given priority, even within the limited constraints of resources that we have to fund our budget.
With 23.8 trillion naira deficit, the government continues to rely heavily on borrowing. While deficits are not unusually globally, the concern in Nigeria's case is what the borrowed funds achieve. If loans are used for salaries, overheads, debt servicing rather than infrastructure, industrial growth, job creation, then the cycle of borrowing risk becomes unsustainable. For many Nigerians, from traders in Abuja market to farmers in rural communities, budget figures rarely translate into real-life impact.
I come from a security background, and I also was a minister in the Ministry of Defense at the time. I have never seen a situation so terrible as we face today. We just finished budget defense with most of the security agencies, and it's so disheartening to know that all of them, what they presented clearly shows that there hasn't been any releases. And Mr. President declared state of emergency on insecurity. And what it means on security, what it means is that things should be done differently and security agencies should be funded. First line as a priority. We all face increased dangers every day. People are dying, our military forces are dying, suffering insufficiency at all, and people are just toying around with policies that are not helping us. What of no confidence? I mean, this is bad, sir. And again, finally, on the part of those managing the economy as well, I think the issue of debt servicing should be thoroughly looked into. I have complained about this thing, so that funds can be released. I mean, the percentage should drop so that funds will be made available for other things. The situation is bad, and it will require immediate and urgent attention outside whatever the law says.
The recurring concerns include project announced but never completed, funds allocated but not released, policies introduced without visible change. The disconnect explains the growing public frustration.
First of all, as legislators, in September, the federal government told us that they have achieved all the revenue targets. All the revenue target for there was achieved in September. 2 weeks later, we were presented with a letter to borrow 1.7 trillion to make up the expenditure for 2025. And we passed that with speed. Now, the expenditure for 2025, the entire expenditure, personnel, recurrent, capital, everything, federal government has gotten the money. Only for federal government to go and tell us that only 30% will be funded. I'm coming. 30% will be funded. That 30%, that means 70% of that revenue and the debt you collected will not be utilized. It's transferred in 2026. Then 30% again was transferred to 2026 again. Instead of it to be spent in 2025 as promised, now you ask us to extend 2025 budget to March 2026. That means the entire 2025 budget, the entire income that was generated for 2025 budget is transferred to 2026. Now we are in 2026. No kobo was given. And we are going to pass 2026 budget. After the 2026 budget, with the revenue for 2026 included, how do we now account to Nigerians that the entire 2025, with all the revenue generated, we have not spent a dime? Why is the money? Why has it gone? If it's in the books, how can we bring out the balance sheet of the federal government? How can we bring out the statement, cash statement, or whatever of the federal government, the cash flow? We want to know, as an accountant general, how do you bring out all those books for Nigerians to see transparently accountable to Nigerians that this is where the entire money, the trillions that we generated, the borrowing that we borrowed in 2025, where did it go?
Every year, the budget grows, but daily life does not necessarily improve. The failure of capital releases in 2025 has only deepened this distrust. Members of the National Assembly have pledged to ensure that projected revenues are fully realized and that the 2026 budget delivers on its promises. There is cautious optimism within the legislature that revenue performance will improve and that budget implementation will be stricter. Oversight will be strengthened. However, Nigerians are watching closely not the speeches but the execution. Ultimately, the success of the 2026 budget will not be measured by its size, its projections, or its theme, but by actual releases of funds, completion of project, visible improvement in people's lives. The planned April 1 rollout marks a critical turning point. It is an opportunity to clear the backlog of abandoned projects, restore confidence in public finance, prove that budget can work for the people. The 2026 budget arrives at a crucial time when Nigeria is not just planning for the future, but trying to fix the past. It carries the weight of two unfinished budgets, a history of weak implementation, and a population increasingly impatient for results. For millions of Nigerians, the question is no longer what is in the budget, but rather, will this one finally make a difference? Thanks for still staying with us. This is your parliamentary program, Inside the Parliament. It's time now to bring you our interview segment. I will bring you this short interview we had with Senator Abdul Ningi, who represents Bauchi Central. We had this interview some time ago where the lawmakers spoke about the budget implementations, why it has remained low, and the projections for years to come. Take a listen.
When a budget of a nation is brought before the National Assembly, the first question is, how far has the budget performed? What are the variables? What are the reasons behind non-performance of the budget? Part of what we get from this particular oversight that we are in is that because of the change of payment architecture, the payment has been centralized in the Federal Ministry of Finance. That means every agency, every ministry, and you can count the number of agencies, federal ministries, every parastatal has to undergo some statutory chores in the Federal Ministry of Finance. And that has drastically reduced the performance of the budget. And we were oversight function in some of these parastatals, and they said contractors have made submission to Federal Ministry of Finance. They have finished their contractual agreement with those agencies, but yet monies have not been paid. And that has been like 3-4 months down the line. So the issue of Nigerian factor has set in. People are afraid. People don't know what to do. The National Assembly has been unable to do some certain responsibilities, some certain duties that it ought to do as a parliament, as a wing of the parliament, as a wing, or as a legislature. And the executive admitted to themselves that the budget has not been sufficiently funded. What are the logics? What is the mindset of the executive when they centralize this payment? The decentralization was what gave rise to the performances of the past several years ahead, before. So, for me, I think they were the kind of changes they wanted to introduce is hasty, it's not well thought of, and the actors that are saddled with this thing are selfish. Otherwise, once it is something that has to do with the performances and is so digitalized, it doesn't take a day to finish with about 100 agencies of government, but it doesn't follow. Probably they thought of two things at the same time. They want to centralize, so they are going to able to control, but they want to centralize without getting critical issues of digitalizing these performances. If you digitalize it, nothing stops you from centralizing, but you now said you centralize and you want to go through the hard copies of papers. That will take time, and that will introduce the Nigerian factor of bribe, and this is what is happening.
Well, thank you so much for still staying with us. This is Inside the Parliament on AIT. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll bring you other activities from the National Assembly, starting from the House of Representatives.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Nigeria's House of Representatives Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream has raised alarm over a further increase in the prices of petroleum products if relevant government agencies refuse to address the supply side failure being experienced by local refineries operating across the country. The chairman of the committee, Ikenga Imo Ugochinyere, who made this known in a media briefing at the National Assembly, insists that the Presidential Technical Committee on Crude Forward Naira must reconvene within 48 48 hours to resolve the issues of crude oil supply to domestic refineries towards preventing the surge in the price of fuel and other petroleum products. The committee chairman noted that the imposition of over $18 per barrel premium by international trading companies on local refineries must be terminated immediately, describing the fee as an exploitative practice that has no place in Nigeria's energy supply chain. The committee called on President Bola Tinubu to issue a stronger executive order reinforcing full compliance with the domestic crude oil supply obligation as provided under the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 to prevent the looming energy crisis in the country.
If we don't address this today, tomorrow, next tomorrow, I'm talking of days, I'm talking of hours, you don't expect the pump price of the PMS to be at the current price. Before they used to charge $2, $4, $5. Now it's 18 as I speak to you now from our rapid response unit. And one of the things I assured Nigeria, our committee will be proactive, and that's what I'm doing now is being proactive, that they are charging them, they are telling them to pay $18. And what will happen is that when they pay this money, they are going to adjust the price of the PMS. So we don't start complaining by the time we start distorting, levers of economic activities. And that is why it's important that the Presidential Committee on the issue of crude supply, that have been doing a fantastic work, should reconvene in the next 48 hours to address the issue of insufficient supply of cargo, address the issue of the $18 premium and other premiums that are charging them before we get up to next week and the prices go up astronomically. And this is not the time, because Muslims and Christians are observing their religious holidays and processes now, and this is the time people are getting closer to the Almighty and does not need to suffer any economic disadvantage. That is why we must address it right now. And people said, oh, they are giving in Naira. Of what quantity? What quantity is being given in Naira? What quantity is being given in Naira? Like I told you, they require 21 cargoes, of which about 14, 15 are supposed to come to Nigeria. And what they're getting is 5 cargoes. 5 cargoes, that's what they're getting. And even the 5 cargoes, most of them are not of the best grade. So we'll be importing. And then if we're importing, you are seeing what is the price of crude now in the international market. So if they continue to rely on all their refinery feedstocks to come from abroad, then the prices will change. And then we need to avert that to ensure that we bridge that gap. And the time to act, like I said, is within the next 48 hours. So we must consider the following, that crude oil is produced right here in Nigeria. To assess it, our refineries, national trading companies, middlemen in London or Dubai who sign papers and collect enormous fee. For every barrel at 100 Naira, the refinery pays $118. $100, you pay almost $118. With $18 going to a briefcase company overseas. So for every 1 million barrels, that is $18 million paid to a middleman in the name of premium. That is outrageous. And there is a domestic crude obligation that these refineries that are indigenous must have access to crude. It's a constitution, it's a legal process, it's a law we made under the PIA. And that must also be enforced. The president has been doing and trying his best to enforce it. It's time to enhance more executive orders to do that as a matter of national economic interest. So this premium was previously, like I said before, $2, $4, $5. The spike to $18 is a direct result of the Middle East conflict, fueling more greed, I must say, among international traders, and Nigerians are bearing the ultimate cost at the pump and likely to bear more if we don't intervene right now. So, we are not here to cause panic. We urge calm and appeal to Nigerians not to engage in panic buying. However, if the refineries do not have sufficient crude supply and the $18 premium is not addressed within the next 48 hours, queues may return. That's the simple truth. And prices will adjust in the coming days. And because we don't want the ongoing economic processes and stability that is coming into play to be distorted, then we must maintain the stability in the supply chain. And this stability is critical, not just because of the religious mood of the country at this moment, but also for sustained economic benefit of every Nigerian. So the fate of millions of Nigerians their ability to afford transportation, food, basic services hangs in the balance if we don't address this. And it's very shameful that these things keeps coming up over and over again, because some people once are finding it difficult to understand that there must be a limit between business interests and national economic interests and nation survival.
Well, that's a wrap on Inside the Parliament for this week. Continue to join us on all our social media platforms to catch up on any episode or edition that you missed during the week. I am Oyedia Orum. Do have a great day ahead.